Vampires, demons, full moons, cemeteries, castles, and some of the best animation that you've ever seen in your life. Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust is the peak definition of the phrase, they don't make them how they used to. Last week I reviewed the 80s Vampire Hunter D movie, which I truly believe is a classic and absolutely worth watching. But then, in the year 2000, Studio Madhouse decided to adapt another book within the Vampire Hunter D novel series, one called Demon Death Case, which is also just an absolutely wicked title for a book or movie, and would have been a pretty cool subtitle for this film. But then again, Bloodlust is also pretty good. Anyway, Madhouse has done some of my favorite anime out there, and I'd say that they are my top animation studio. And this goddamn movie, looks so fantastic. If dark Gothic atmosphere needed a visual explanation to clarify to you what a vampire movie should look like, it is this film. The tone, the coloring, the lighting, the way the demonic entities attack and move, the flow to it, the fear that it presents with the magnitude of power some of these characters possess, and the creative ways to showcase different demon abilities. The visual flair and skill is on display, and unlike modern bright and shiny anime, the darkness that this film creates, it creates its own perfect aesthetic for setting up a story within this kind of universe. Also important to note, though, that this movie was directed by the absolute legend Yoshiaki Kawajiri, director of both Wicked City and Ninja Scroll, which I have reviewed on this channel, and this was his first film directing project since Ninja Scroll, which was in 1993. He still worked on other things within that 7-year gap, but here he was back taking the reins as director, and it really shows. No wonder in the early 2000s, while wandering the back aisles of Blockbuster Video, this movie and Ninja Scroll sat nearly side by side on the shelf together, completely alluring to my 12-year-old mind. And after that mind was broken in by Ninja Scroll, I needed as much wild and insane adult-oriented violent anime as I could possibly find. Bloodlust is the appropriate word, as it's what I had, and it's what this film satiated. Now, if you didn't see my last review on the first Vampire Hunter D movie, that's okay, because this movie can be watched completely without having seen the original film whatsoever. What I'm getting out of this series from only watching the movies is that each novel is its own story, just involving the same lead character, which is D. So if you were to go into this film blind, it's going to explain basically everything that you need to know. Kind of. We know that this is a world that takes place a little bit into the future, but is broken down and terrorized as vampires and monsters exist, and humans do what they can to defend against them. Some of their technology is pretty advanced, but it's not exactly a thriving society here. It's a little bit Mad Max inspired, especially in this film with some of its backdrops, and this big tanker that some of the main characters are driving. As the film opens, a girl named Charlotte is abducted by a vampire, and so, naturally, her family hires a vampire hunter to find her and bring her back home. And that hunter is D, who is actually a Dhampir, a half-vampire and half-human. D is a cold, calculating, stoic loner that travels the world distancing himself from people as to not get too close and endanger them with his own bloodlust. He has the enhanced strength, speed, and senses of a vampire, but he has no sympathy or remorse for that side of his bloodline. His job is killing monsters, and he's really fucking good at it. He also has a cursed left hand that is alive and talks to him. In both movies, the origin of this little nuisance is not explained, but it serves as yet another thing to taunt and annoy D as he tries to do his thing. However, in this movie, the cursed hand is a little bit more helpful than it was in the other film. The hand seems to live on D kind of like a parasite, so I imagine if D died, I'm assuming the hand would as well. This causes their relationship to be a pretty funny dynamic, as the hand will help D out, but also berate the shit out of him from time to time. There's also another group of vampire hunters that are on the same case, a group of extremely skilled humans who are looking to be the ones that rescue Charlotte before D can. They are pretty much your standard ragtag group of misfits with a lot of unique weaponry to help them even the scales against the monsters of the world. My favorite is this giant motherfucker that looks like Bane, and he carries a mallet with a stake on the end of it. That's just cool. For the most part, they tear through the weaker vampires, but when shit starts getting real, it starts to become a little tragic seeing this team of friends start to fall underneath the pressure of the situation. because obviously the plot isn't so simple. I don't want to spoil anything in this video, but the dynamic between Charlotte and Miar Link, who is the vampire that took her, isn't exactly what you would expect. Yes, underneath the gothic exterior and the incredible action, there is an interesting theme at present, which seems to be connections between people. It's seen primarily within the group of human bounty hunters, but it's also seen within D himself. As someone that must distance himself from humans, D isn't out there seeking a sense of redemption or a meaning of life. If anything, it seems that his lack of meaning is what allows him to do what he does. But there's a very subtle, slow brewing dynamic between him and Layla, and no, it's not a love story. As much as I adore a good romance, this is not the purpose of their relationship. It's more so an understanding. Two people that live two completely different existences, but now with a common goal and with little ill will towards one another. Even if D is part vampire, there's enough human within him to give Layla empathy when it's needed, and the same can be said when the situation switches. What they form isn't exactly called a friendship, but it is grounded on a mutual respect and honoring one another in the only ways that they know how. You may also be surprised to know that despite the film being directed by Kawajiri and literally being called Bloodlust, the gore and nudity in this movie is nowhere near his other works. Actually, I don't believe there's any nudity in this film whatsoever, and any kind of gore is very quick and precise. In a way, it kind of reflects D's style as a warrior, fast, efficient, and without lingering too long on any one thing. Instead, the director lets the style and animation of the film fill in the gaps of our own bloodlust. And it's wild that you don't seem to care while you're watching it. You embrace the film and it takes you away to a distant world and a time in animation where anime could just look this goddamn good. I want to talk about a few specific things that I love. First of all, the introduction of the human team and this battle they have in the cemetery. Holy shit, it is so much fun. It shows you all the characters, their weapon styles, how they act together, and then it climaxes as their leader shoots an arrow at D, who just catches it out of the air like an absolute badass, and all the characters stand there stunned. It's fantastic. There is a scene where the main antagonist Mir is forcing himself to walk through sunlight, a heavy weakness and a killer of vampires, and seeing his determination as he tries to take single steps out in broad daylight as his body is burning away. It was a very jaw-dropping scene the first time I saw it, and it still is really powerful. One funny thing I noticed, I was watching the English dub, and is it just me, or does this character sound exactly like Mr. Meeseeks?
Three of us to entertain our young guest here.
Why did you even rope me into this?
And then the final battle. It takes place within this gigantic Gothic castle, and so much shit goes down here. The characters start seeing visions of things that haunt them in their own subconscious and in their past. This crazy vampire thing that has been a piece of my own nightmare since I was young. Ever since seeing it for the first time and now, it has still been seared into my brain for all of these years. And the fight between D and Mir is truly something to behold. I love how Mir's cape becomes like a batwing weapon for him to use. Also, D, of course, just uses a giant fucking sword, and who doesn't love one of those? Overall, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust is one wild ride and is the kind of movie that reminds you just how good older anime used to be. Even though it came out in the year 2000, it still holds up so well against modern anime films, and it's the kind of movie you want to put on at midnight. Hopefully, there's a full moon outside, some fog is rolling into town, maybe you're clutching a crucifix next to you, the lights are off, some candles are lit, and you drift away into an action, horror, dark fantasy that will captivate you like nothing else has ever since. Anyways, guys, if you have seen Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. What was your first experience with the movie? What do you think about it to this day? And if there was ever a continuation or a sequel series or a new anime series, what would you like to see from this world and these characters? Let me know all that down below. Also, if you check the links in the description, I do have a Patreon if you want to help support the channel, even for as low as $1 a month. It would really help me out. There's a merch store as well, and the various social media links where you can follow me. Other than that, guys, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.